The most dangerous man in the room isn't always the loudest. Sometimes he's the one who says nothing at all. Silence has a strange effect on people. When someone enters a room laughing loudly, speaking over everyone else, demanding attention, most people notice them immediately. They assume confidence. They mistake volume for strength. But then there is another kind of man. He walks in quietly. He doesn't rush to introduce himself. He doesn't seek approval. He doesn't feel compelled to prove his intelligence, his wealth, or his status. His posture is relaxed. His movements are deliberate. His eyes observe more than they reveal. Without saying much, he changes the atmosphere. People begin wondering who he is. Not because he asks them to, because his composure creates questions that words cannot answer. This kind of presence has fascinated philosophers, psychologists, military leaders, and ordinary people for centuries. Why does calmness command attention? Why do some individuals seem powerful without displaying power? And why are people often more unsettled by someone who remains emotionally controlled than by someone who openly expresses anger? The answer lies deep within human psychology. Our minds evolved to predict danger. Thousands of years ago, survival depended on reading other people's intentions before they acted. A person who shouted constantly was often easy to understand. Their emotions were visible. Their motives were exposed. The quiet individual was different. He revealed very little. His intentions remained hidden, and what the human mind cannot predict, it naturally treats with caution. This isn't because silence is magical. It's because uncertainty captures attention. Psychologists have long observed that people instinctively try to fill gaps in information. When someone speaks very little, others begin writing the story themselves. Some imagine confidence, others imagine intelligence. Some assume authority, others assume hidden strength. The silent person often becomes larger in the minds of observers than reality itself. This is why mystery has always carried influence, not because mystery guarantees power, but because the human brain dislikes unanswered questions. Yet there is an important distinction. Silence alone does not create strength. A frightened man can remain silent. An insecure man can avoid speaking. Someone overwhelmed by fear may appear quiet while feeling powerless inside. True composure is something entirely different. It is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of emotion. That distinction changes everything. Throughout history, many of the most respected leaders shared this quality. They were capable of anger, but they were not controlled by it. They were capable of violence, yet they exercised restraint. They possessed power, yet they understood that unnecessary displays of power often revealed insecurity rather than confidence. The ancient Stoics understood this principle well. They believed that the greatest victories were not won over enemies. They were won over oneself. A person who cannot control his impulses remains vulnerable, no matter how physically strong he appears. Imagine two men standing face to face during an argument. The first begins shouting. His breathing quickens, his muscles tighten. His emotions seize control of his judgment. Every insult thrown at him dictates his next move. The second listens. His heartbeat rises just as much. His body experiences the same surge of adrenaline, but instead of reacting immediately, he pauses. He thinks. He chooses. Outwardly, both men experience emotion. Only one remains its master. Modern psychology supports this observation. Emotions are automatic. Reactions are choices. The space between those two realities defines emotional maturity. This is where genuine strength begins. Unfortunately, modern culture often teaches the opposite. Many people believe strength means dominance, winning every argument, always having the last word, never appearing vulnerable, always projecting superiority. Yet genuine confidence rarely announces itself. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't seek validation. It simply exists. There is a paradox hidden within human nature. The more desperately someone tries to convince others of their strength, the more people begin questioning it. Real confidence doesn't chase recognition. It attracts it. This explains why the calm individual often becomes the psychological center of a room. Not because everyone agrees with him, but because everyone notices what he refuses to give away. His emotional independence, His reactions cannot be purchased by insults. His peace cannot easily be stolen by criticism. His identity does not fluctuate according to public opinion. And in a world driven by constant reactions, that becomes extraordinarily rare. But this raises another question. Can emotional control become dangerous? The answer is yes. Not all calm people are wise. Not every silent person is virtuous. History has shown us individuals who possessed extraordinary self-control while pursuing destructive goals. Composure by itself is morally neutral. It is a tool, like intelligence, like discipline, like ambition. In the hands of a compassionate person, emotional mastery protects others. In the hands of a cruel person, it can become manipulation. Understanding this distinction is essential. Stoicism was never about becoming cold. It was never about suppressing empathy. It was never about abandoning emotion altogether. Its purpose was something far more profound, to ensure that reason, not impulse, guided action. That lesson remains just as relevant today, because every day we are surrounded by opportunities to surrender control. A careless comment online, a harsh word from a stranger, a betrayal by someone we trusted, a disappointment we never expected. Each moment asks the same question: who is in control? The circumstance, or you? That question has echoed through centuries, and every generation must answer it for themselves. To be continued in Part 2, Why Quiet Men Command Respect. The Psychology of Presence. Part 2, Why Quiet Men Command Respect. The Psychology of Presence. There is a curious truth about human behavior. People rarely remember every word you say. They forget most conversations within days. They struggle to recall exact sentences, clever arguments, or perfect explanations. But they remember how you made them feel. A calm presence can linger in someone's memory long after your voice has faded. This is why some individuals leave a lasting impression without ever trying to become the center of attention. Their power lies not in performance, but in presence. Presence is difficult to define because it cannot be reduced to appearance alone. It isn't height. It isn't physical strength. It isn't expensive clothing or social status. Some of the most imposing people in history stood quietly while others spoke. What made them memorable was something deeper. They seemed completely at ease with themselves, and human beings notice that instinctively. Psychologists often describe confidence as a social signal. Every movement communicates something. The way someone walks, the way they breathe, the way they make eye contact, the way they respond under pressure. Most of these signals happen below conscious awareness. Within seconds of meeting someone, the brain begins making predictions. Can this person be trusted? Are they fearful? Are they competent? Will they remain calm if something goes wrong? These judgments aren't always accurate, but they are remarkably fast. Long before language evolved into its modern complexity, our ancestors survived by reading behavior. A nervous glance could signal deception. A panicked expression could warn of danger. A steady posture could indicate experience. Even today, much of our communication happens without words. This is why composure often carries more weight than eloquence. Anyone can rehearse a confident speech. Far fewer people can remain composed when everything around them begins to unravel. That is the true test of character. Imagine two captains steering separate ships into a violent storm. The waves rise higher than expected. The wind tears at the sails. The crew begins to panic. The first captain shouts orders in desperation. His voice cracks. His fear spreads through the crew like fire through dry grass. Every anxious expression confirms the belief that disaster is inevitable. The second captain faces the same storm. He feels the same danger. His heart beats just as fast. But he speaks deliberately. His movements remain measured. His confidence steadies the crew. Nothing about the storm has changed, only the emotional climate aboard the ship. This is one of the greatest lessons of leadership. Emotions are contagious. Fear spreads. Panic spreads. Anger spreads. But so does calmness. Researchers studying emotional contagion have repeatedly found that people unconsciously mirror the emotional states of those around them. One anxious person can elevate stress across an entire group. One composed individual can reduce it. The strongest person in the room is often the one who regulates not only himself, but everyone else. This is why Stoicism placed such importance on self-governance. The Stoics understood that a person incapable of governing his own emotions could never truly lead others. Leadership begins internally. Before commanding armies, command yourself. Before changing the world, master your reactions. This philosophy challenged the common belief that strength meant domination. To dominate others is easy. To dominate your impulses, that is far more difficult. Consider anger. Anger itself is not weakness. It is a natural human emotion. Sometimes it even points toward injustice that deserves to be confronted. The danger begins when anger becomes the decision-maker. An uncontrolled mind mistakes immediate satisfaction for long-term victory. A disciplined mind asks a different question. What outcome do I actually want? That single question separates reaction from strategy. Many people confuse emotional restraint with passivity. They assume that quiet individuals lack courage. But history often tells a different story. The most disciplined warriors were rarely the most reckless. They understood that unnecessary conflict wastes energy. Every battle carries a cost. Every emotional outburst reveals information. Every uncontrolled reaction hands your opponent a map to your mind. The person who understands your emotional triggers can predict your behavior. Prediction creates vulnerability. This is why composure can become a form of psychological armor. Not because emotions disappear, but because they become less predictable. This idea appears throughout military history. The greatest strategists rarely acted from wounded pride. They acted from careful observation, while others rushed forward driven by emotion. They waited. Patience frustrated impulsive opponents. Silence invited mistakes. Discipline outlasted aggression. The same principle applies in everyday life. Arguments between partners, conflicts in the workplace, disagreements among friends. Often, the first person to lose emotional control also loses the ability to think clearly. Words are spoken that cannot be taken back. Decisions are made that create lasting regret. A single emotional moment can undo years of trust. Stoicism never suggested becoming emotionless. Instead, it asked a profound question. Must every feeling become an action? You can feel anger without becoming cruel. You can feel fear without surrendering. You can experience disappointment without abandoning hope. Between emotion and action lies one precious space. Choice. That space is where freedom lives. Most people believe freedom means doing whatever they feel. The Stoics believed the opposite. If every impulse controls you, are you truly free? Or are you simply following the commands of your emotions? Real freedom begins when you can experience powerful feelings without becoming their prisoner. This kind of discipline is uncommon. Our world rewards immediacy, instant opinions, instant outrage, instant gratification. Every notification demands attention. Every disagreement invites reaction. Every criticism encourages defense. Yet the person who chooses his responses carefully possesses something increasingly rare: inner authority. He no longer needs the world to determine his emotional state. His peace is no longer rented from external circumstances. It belongs to him. But this raises another challenge. Can someone become too detached? Can emotional control become emotional isolation? The answer is yes, and this is where many misunderstand Stoicism. Some imagine that strength requires suppressing every emotion, never smiling, never grieving, never expressing affection, never admitting pain. But suppression is not mastery. Suppressed emotions do not disappear. They wait, hidden beneath the surface, until one day they emerge with greater force than before. The Stoics understood this. Their goal was not to bury emotion, it was to understand it, to examine it, to ask whether it reflected reality or merely perception, because not every thought deserves belief. Not every fear deserves obedience. Not every insult deserves a response. Sometimes the strongest action is no action at all. There is immense power in refusing to be pulled into battles that do not deserve your energy. A person who reacts to everything soon controls nothing, but a person who chooses carefully where to invest attention preserves strength for what truly matters. And perhaps that is what makes certain individuals seem so formidable. It is not that they lack emotion, it is that they have learned something most people never do. Your attention is your life. Where it goes, your future follows. The quiet man understands this. He protects his attention as carefully as others protect their possessions, because he knows something many discover too late. The greatest battle you will ever fight will never be against another person. It will be against the impulses within yourself, and the outcome of that battle will determine every other victory or defeat that follows. Part 3. The most dangerous man is the one who has mastered himself. There is an old saying, "He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty." At first glance, it sounds like poetic wisdom. But beneath those simple words lies one of the deepest truths about human nature. Most people spend their lives trying to control the world around them. They try to control how others perceive them. They try to control outcomes. They try to control circumstances that were never theirs to command. And in doing so, they neglect the one thing that has always been within their reach: themselves. This is the paradox of power. The more you chase control over other people, the less control you often have over your own mind. A harsh comment ruins your day. A stranger's opinion changes your confidence. A setback convinces you to quit. Without realizing it, you hand the steering wheel of your life to forces outside yourself. The Stoics saw this as the greatest form of slavery, not chains around the wrists, but chains around the mind. Because if your peace depends on circumstances always going your way, then your peace is fragile. It can be stolen by anyone. A careless insult, a failed opportunity, a broken promise, a difficult morning. Each becomes powerful enough to dictate your emotional state. But the man who has mastered himself lives differently. He does not pretend life is easy. He does not deny pain. He simply refuses to let pain become his master. Imagine an archer preparing to release an arrow. He chooses the finest bow. He practices for years. He studies the wind. He steadies his breathing. He takes careful aim. Then he releases. At that moment, the arrow no longer belongs to him. The wind may change. Rain may fall. The target may move. The outcome is uncertain. But the effort was always within his control. This simple image reflects one of Stoicism's most profound ideas. Focus on what is yours. Release what is not. Modern psychology echoes this principle in studies of resilience. People who distinguish between what they can influence and what they cannot often cope more effectively with stress, uncertainty, and failure. They conserve energy instead of wasting it on impossible battles. The opposite is equally true. Many people exhaust themselves fighting reality. They replay conversations that cannot be changed. They resent the past. They fear futures that have not yet arrived. They become prisoners of imaginary scenarios. Their bodies remain in the present, but their minds wander endlessly through regrets and anxieties. The disciplined mind returns again and again, not because it never wanders, but because it knows where home is, the present moment. This is where strength is built, not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. It is tempting to believe that dangerous men are fearless, but fearlessness is often misunderstood. Even the most courageous people experience fear. The difference is not in what they feel, it is in what they obey. Fear whispers, "Run." Discipline asks, "Is running necessary?" Anger whispers, "Strike back." Wisdom asks, "What will that accomplish?" Pride whispers, "Prove yourself." Humility asks, "To whom?" Every day, these voices compete for authority inside the human mind. Most people obey the loudest one. The Stoic learns to listen to the quietest. Reason. That quiet voice rarely shouts. It doesn't demand attention. It simply waits, patiently, until the noise settles. One of the greatest misconceptions about self-mastery is that it happens all at once, as though one morning a person wakes up transformed, completely disciplined, completely fearless, completely wise. Reality is far less dramatic. Mastery is built through ordinary moments. Choosing not to respond to an unnecessary argument, keeping a promise when nobody would know if you broke it, waking up to train when comfort begs you to stay in bed, admitting a mistake instead of protecting your ego, listening more than speaking, Each decision seems insignificant on its own, but character is not built in extraordinary moments. It is revealed through ordinary ones. Think of a blacksmith forging a sword. He does not strike the steel once. He heats it, hammers it, cools it, repeats the process again and again. The blade becomes strong because of repetition, not because of a single blow. The human mind is forged the same way. Every challenge shapes it. Every disappointment tempers it. Every hardship offers another opportunity to become either more resilient or more bitter. The choice is never made once. It is made daily. There is another reason self-mastery creates such a powerful presence: predictability, or rather, the absence of it. An impulsive person is easy to manipulate. Compliment him and he becomes attached. Insult him and he becomes angry. Tempt him and he abandons his principles. His buttons are visible. Anyone can press them. But what happens when someone refuses to react automatically? The manipulator loses his map. Control disappears. This is why emotional discipline can be deeply unsettling to those who seek power over others. They cannot predict you, not because you are pretending, but because your actions are guided by principles instead of impulses. Principles endure. Impulses change with every emotion. And this leads us to one of the most misunderstood ideas in discussions about dangerous men. The truly dangerous man is not dangerous because he wants to hurt people. He is dangerous because he possesses the capacity for strength and chooses restraint. There is an enormous difference. A harmless person avoids violence because he has no choice. A disciplined person avoids violence because he has made one. The distinction matters. Real restraint requires capability. Without capability, restraint is merely limitation. History offers countless examples of individuals who possessed immense power yet exercised extraordinary self-control. Their greatness was not measured by how often they fought, but by how rarely they needed to. They understood that every unnecessary battle weakens the warrior. Every ego-driven conflict drains attention from what truly matters. The mature mind asks a different question. Is this worth my energy? Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every challenge deserves acceptance. Not every victory deserves pursuit, because time is finite. Attention, is finite. Life itself is finite. Every moment spent proving yourself to strangers is a moment unavailable for becoming the person you were meant to be. Perhaps this is why the calmest people often seem the strongest. They have stopped performing strength. They are simply living it. Their confidence no longer depends on applause. Their peace no longer depends on agreement. Their identity no longer depends on comparison. And when a person reaches that point, something remarkable happens. The world loses much of its power to disturb him, not because life becomes easier, but because he has become stronger than many of the forces that once controlled him. That is the essence of Stoicism, not becoming emotionless, not becoming cold, but becoming sovereign over your own mind. Because before you can lead others, before you can build anything meaningful, before you can withstand the storms that life inevitably brings, there is one kingdom that must first be brought into order, the kingdom within. Only then does true strength emerge, not as noise, not as intimidation, but as quiet, unwavering resolve. And that kind of strength needs no introduction. Part 4. The Shadow Within. Why every man must confront his dark side. There is a side of every human being that few people ever see. It does not appear in public photographs. It does not reveal itself during polite conversations. It hides beneath carefully chosen words, practiced smiles, and everyday routines. Yet it is always there, waiting. The ancient Stoics understood that the greatest threats to a person's character often came not from the outside world, but from within. Long before modern psychology gave names to unconscious drives and hidden motives, they recognized that every person carries impulses, capable of both creation and destruction. Within every man exists the capacity for kindness and cruelty, for courage and cowardice, for generosity and selfishness, for discipline and chaos. Most people prefer to believe they possess only the admirable qualities. It is comforting to think of ourselves as entirely good, entirely rational, entirely moral. But comfort is not the same as truth. The moment a person convinces himself that he is incapable of wrongdoing, he becomes vulnerable to it, because what remains unseen cannot be examined, and what cannot be examined cannot be controlled. This is why genuine self-knowledge begins with honesty. Not the honesty we offer to others, but the honesty we reserve for ourselves. Can you admit your envy? Can you recognize your pride before it speaks? Can you acknowledge your desire for revenge without acting upon it? Can you face your weaknesses without allowing them to define you? These questions are uncomfortable. Yet growth has never begun inside comfort. Imagine a king who refuses to inspect the foundations of his own castle. The walls appear magnificent. The towers rise high above the landscape. Visitors admire its beauty. But beneath the surface, cracks begin to spread. Hidden rot weakens the structure. One day, without warning, the castle collapses. Not because the enemy was stronger, but because neglect accomplished what no invading army could. The human mind is no different. Ignoring your darker impulses does not eliminate them. It merely leaves them unattended. Modern psychology supports this observation. Research on emotional regulation suggests that denying difficult emotions often strengthens them. Feelings that are ignored or suppressed can return with greater intensity, influencing behavior in ways a person barely notices. Anger denied may become bitterness. Fear denied may become avoidance. Shame denied may become arrogance. The emotion changes its appearance, but it does not disappear. This is where many people misunderstand strength. They believe strength means never experiencing weakness. In reality, strength often begins the moment weakness is acknowledged. The disciplined person is not free from temptation. He simply recognizes it before it takes control. He does not pretend to be above human nature. He studies it, because every battle won inside the mind becomes one less battle fought in the outside world. There is another reason confronting your darker side matters. Unchecked impulses seek expression. A man who refuses to examine his pride may become obsessed with status. A man who never questions his anger may begin to mistake intimidation for respect. A man who avoids confronting his fears may spend his life running from opportunities that could have transformed him. In each case, the problem is not the emotion itself. The problem is unconscious obedience. To master yourself, you must first know yourself. That knowledge is rarely pleasant. It reveals contradictions. It exposes hypocrisy. It uncovers motives you would rather keep hidden. But it also offers freedom, because once something is seen clearly, it can be changed. This is one of the greatest differences between wisdom and ignorance. Ignorance protects the ego. Wisdom challenges it. The ego wants to appear flawless. Wisdom seeks to become better. The ego demands admiration. Wisdom pursues understanding. The ego asks, how do people see me? Wisdom asks, who am I when no one is watching? That question has no easy answer, but it is the beginning of genuine character. Many people spend years building an impressive public image while neglecting their private lives. They become skilled at looking disciplined without becoming disciplined. They appear confident while secretly fearing rejection. They project strength while avoiding difficult truths. Eventually, maintaining the performance becomes exhausting, because pretending requires constant effort. Authenticity does not. The Stoics urged people to align their inner lives with their outward actions, to become the same person in private as in public. Not because perfection is possible, but because integrity is not the absence of flaws. It is the refusal to live divided. There is a profound peace that comes from no longer hiding from yourself, no longer inventing excuses, no longer blaming circumstances for every failure. Instead, you begin asking a different question. What part of this can I improve? That question changes everything. It shifts attention from blame to responsibility, from resentment to action, from helplessness to growth. Responsibility is often misunderstood as a burden. In truth, it is a source of power. If everything is someone else's fault, then nothing is yours to change. But if you accept responsibility for your own thoughts, your habits, and your decisions, you reclaim influence over your future. This is why the Stoics insisted that character is formed through repeated choices, not grand declarations, not dramatic moments, but the countless quiet decisions that no audience ever witnesses. Choosing honesty when deception would be easier, choosing patience when anger feels justified, choosing discipline when comfort calls your name. Each choice strengthens a different part of you. Little by little, the person you are becoming begins to emerge, not by accident, but by intention, and perhaps that is what makes a truly disciplined man seem so formidable. He has already fought battles most people never see. He has wrestled with pride. He has faced fear. He has questioned his own motives. He has learned that the greatest enemy is often the one reflected in the mirror. When that battle is fought with honesty, the world itself becomes less intimidating, because external obstacles lose much of their power over someone who has already conquered many of the internal ones. The quiet confidence of such a person is not an act. It is earned, forged through self-examination, strengthened by discipline, tempered by humility. He no longer seeks to appear dangerous. He seeks to become trustworthy, capable, steady, reliable. And ironically, those qualities often make him far more formidable than someone obsessed with looking powerful. For the greatest strength has never been found in domination. It has always been found in mastery. Mastery over fear, mastery over anger, mastery over pride, and above all, mastery over oneself. Part 5. The Discipline of Silence. Why powerful men speak less and observe more. There is a reason silence has been revered by philosophers, generals, and wise leaders across history. Not because silence is mysterious, not because it is intimidating, but because silence creates space. Space to think, space to observe, space to choose. Most people speak to be heard. The disciplined person speaks to communicate. There is a difference. One seeks attention. The other seeks understanding. In nearly every conversation, there are two dialogues taking place. The first is spoken aloud. The second exists beneath the words. Tone, body language, hesitation, confidence, fear. These silent signals often reveal far more than language itself. The person who constantly prepares his next response rarely notices them. But the one who listens, truly listens, begins to see patterns, invisible to everyone else. He notices the uncertainty behind arrogance, the loneliness behind constant humor, the fear hidden beneath aggression. He realizes that people often reveal themselves without intending to, and because he observes more than he speaks, his understanding grows. The Stoics believed wisdom begins not with speaking, but with listening. Not merely listening to others, but listening to yourself. How often do you react before thinking? How often does your ego interrupt your judgment? How often do you speak simply because silence feels uncomfortable? Many people fear silence because silence leaves them alone with their thoughts. They fill every quiet moment with conversation, entertainment, notifications, or noise. Yet in constant distraction, self-knowledge becomes impossible. A restless mind cannot examine itself. A noisy life rarely leaves room for reflection. This is why solitude has always played an important role in the development of character. Not isolation from humanity, but temporary distance from distraction. In those quiet moments, difficult questions emerge. Who am I becoming? What habits are shaping my future? What fears continue to control my decisions? Am I living according to my principles, or merely reacting to circumstances? These are not comfortable questions, but they are necessary ones. Because a life without reflection easily becomes a life without direction. There is another lesson hidden within silence. Restraint. Not every opinion needs to be expressed. Not every criticism deserves an answer. Not every misunderstanding requires immediate correction. Sometimes words clarify. Other times they only multiply confusion. The disciplined person learns the difference. He understands that every sentence carries consequences. Once spoken, words cannot be reclaimed. This is why measured speech often reflects a measured mind. It is not about speaking less for the sake of appearing wise. It is about ensuring that when you do speak, your words carry weight. History remembers leaders whose few words inspired extraordinary action, not because they spoke endlessly, but because their actions gave credibility to their words. This is another paradox. The less someone seeks attention, the more people often pay attention. Authenticity has a quiet gravity. It does not force itself upon others. It simply exists. And people feel it. Over time, this discipline transforms more than communication. It transforms identity. You stop measuring yourself by applause. You stop chasing every argument. You stop allowing every opinion to define your worth. Your confidence becomes internal rather than external. You become less interested in proving yourself, and more interested in improving yourself. This shift changes everything, because life itself begins to look different. Failure becomes instruction. Success becomes responsibility. Criticism becomes information rather than insult. Adversity becomes training. Every experience becomes an opportunity to refine your character. This is the heart of Stoicism. Not escaping hardship, but using hardship to become wiser. Not avoiding pain, but refusing to waste it. The disciplined individual understands something many spend decades discovering. Life does not owe anyone comfort. It offers something far more valuable: opportunity. Opportunity to choose integrity over convenience. Discipline over impulse. Courage over fear. Purpose over distraction. And each choice, repeated consistently, shapes the person standing in the mirror. Conclusion: the quiet strength that cannot be taken. Perhaps the title of this journey has been misunderstood from the very beginning. When people hear the phrase dangerous man, they often imagine someone ruthless, someone feared, someone capable of violence. But the greatest danger has never been directed toward others. It is directed toward ignorance, toward fear, toward weakness of character. The truly formidable person is not the one who terrifies the world. He is the one who refuses to be ruled by it. He cannot be easily manipulated because he understands his emotions. He cannot be easily distracted because he knows his purpose. He cannot be easily broken because he has accepted that suffering is part of life, not proof that life has abandoned him. His strength does not come from pretending to be invincible. It comes from knowing he is human and choosing discipline anyway. He experiences fear, but fear does not become his master. He feels anger, but anger does not become his identity. He encounters failure, but failure does not become his destination. He learns. He adapts. He continues. That is resilience. And resilience is far rarer than talent, far rarer than intelligence, far rarer than physical strength. Because resilience is forged one decision at a time, one difficult conversation, one act of self-control, one promise kept when no one else is watching, one quiet moment of choosing principles over impulse. These moments rarely make headlines. No audience applauds them, no spotlight shines upon them. Yet they determine the course of a life. The Stoics understood that greatness is not an event. It is a habit, a way of meeting each day with intention, a commitment to becoming slightly wiser than you were yesterday. The world will always contain chaos. There will always be people who misunderstand you. There will always be setbacks you never planned for. There will always be storms. The question is not whether storms will come. The question is who you will become when they do. Will you be like a leaf carried wherever the wind decides, or like a deeply rooted tree, bending when necessary but refusing to break? That choice belongs to you. Every morning, every conversation, every decision. No philosophy can make those choices on your behalf. No teacher can walk your path for you. No book can substitute for lived experience. The principles of Stoicism are not meant to be admired from a distance. They are meant to be practiced patiently, imperfectly, consistently, because character is not built in a single moment of inspiration. It is built in thousands of moments of quiet discipline, and perhaps that is the final lesson. The most dangerous man is not the loudest. He is not the most aggressive. He is not the one who seeks to dominate every room. The most dangerous man is the one who has mastered his own mind, the one who can remain calm when others panic, who can remain humble when others boast, who can remain just when others seek revenge, who can remain kind without becoming weak, who can remain strong without becoming cruel. Such a person may never command the world's attention, but he will command something far greater, his own life. And there is no greater victory than that. So as you leave this reflection, remember this. The greatest battle is rarely fought with fists. It is fought in the silent moments when no one else is watching. Win those battles, and the rest of life begins to change. Not overnight, but one deliberate choice at a time. Thank you for listening. May your strength be guided by wisdom, your discipline by purpose, and your character by the choices you make each day.